get-go.
Just want to start today with a trigger warning disclaimer. This podcast contains descriptions of death and drowning. Hi, I'm Katie Carpenter.
I'm Terry Kovanitz.
We apologize for any and all mistakes today as we begin this episode of Titanic Transcripts.
The witness has been sworn. Give your full name.
Henry Samuel Etches.
Where do you reside?
Number 23A, Gordon Avenue, Southampton.
Are you a married or single man?
Married.
How old are you?
40, sir.
And what is your business?
Bedroom steward, sir.
Were you bedroom steward on the Titanic on the voyage from Southampton up to the time of the accident?
Yes, sir.
And what deck were you on?
B deck, after end, port side.
How many rooms did you have charge of?
8 on B deck and 1 on A deck.
Do you know who the passengers were on A deck?
Mr. Andrews, sir.
The builder of the ship.
Yes, sir.
And what apartment did he have?
He had a separate cabin with a bathroom attached, the only cabin. There was only one on each part of the after end of A deck.
What was the number?
36, sir.
Did you see Mr. Andrews frequently during the voyage?
Every morning at 7 o'clock I went to his cabin, sir.
For what purpose?
I used to take him some fruit and tea.
And when would you see him next?
I used to see him again when he dressed at night. That would be about a quarter or 20 minutes to 7 as a rule. He was rather late in dressing.
Had you ever known him before this voyage?
I had met him several times at Belfast because I had been on the Olympic.
Oh, did he build the Olympic?
Yes, sir.
How old a man was Mr. Andrews?
He signed himself as 38 on a paper that I gave him.
Did he seem to be in good health on the voyage?
In perfect health.
And did he seem to be busy?
He was busy the whole time.
Did he have maps and drawings in his apartment?
He had charts rolled up by the side of his bed, and he had papers of all descriptions on his table during the day.
So he was apparently working.
He was working all the time, sir. He was making notes of improvements, any improvements that could be made.
On the ship?
In any of the cabins. Anything that was pointed out to him, he was making notes of it.
From what you saw of him, you gathered that he was giving his undivided attention to the ship on its trial trip?
I never saw him anywhere else, but during the day I met him in all parts, with workmen going about. I mentioned several things to him, and he was with workmen having them attended to. The whole day he was working from one part of the ship to the other.
Did you see him working nights?
He was very late in going to bed, sir. I never saw him in the smoke room or any of those other rooms. I happened to meet him at a different part of Deck E more often than anywhere else.
Did you see him in the boiler room?
He had a suit, and I have seen that suit thrown on the bed when he had it taken off. I have seen him in the chief engineer's room.
You mean by that he had a special suit which he wore when he went into the boiler room?
It was there for the purpose. I knew exactly what it was. It was a suit that the surveyors put on.
What did you say about a suit that he wore when he went into the engineering department?
Well, he had an engineering suit on then. An ordinary blue suit, sir.
When did you last see Mr. Andrews?
It would be about 20 minutes past 12. He stopped me. I was going along B deck, and he asked if I had waked up all my passengers. Mr. Harrison came up then, and I said, "No, I am going to see if the Carter family are up." And I went to open the door. Mr. Harrison said, "I can tell you they are up. I have just come out of my cabin." His cabin adjoined Mr. Andrews, and then he told me to come down on C deck with him, and we went down to the pantry staircase together. Going down, he told me to be sure and make the passengers open their doors and to tell them the life belts were on top of the wardrobes and on top of the racks, and to assist them in every way I could to get them on, which I endeavored to do.
Is that the last time you ever saw him?
No, sir. We walked along C deck together. The purser was standing outside of his office and a large group of ladies. The purser was asking them to do as he asked them, and to go back in their rooms and not to frighten themselves, but, as a preliminary caution, to put the lifebelts on, and the stewards would give them every attention. Mr. Andrews said, "That is exactly what I have been trying to get them to do." And with that, he walked down the staircase to go on lower to D deck. That is the last I saw of Mr. Andrews.
He never asked you to put a life belt on him, did he?
No, sir, and I never saw him with one in his own hand.
Was he the only passenger or the only cabin passenger in an apartment on A deck?
No, sir. Mr. and Mrs. Carter and the two children were occupying 98 and 96. Mr. Harrison was next door, occupying 94. Mr. Guggenheim was occupying 84 with his secretary.
All on A deck?
Not on A deck. There were only two cabins on the after end of A deck. One was vacant and the other was occupied.
On the deck below, under your charge, what rooms did you have?
98, 96, 94, and then came the door. The other rooms were empty until I came to 84, occupied by Mr. Guggenheim and his secretary. Mr. Carter's valet was in 96, the inside cabin.
And where were you when the collision came?
Asleep, sir.
Oh, in what part of the ship?
In our apartments, which were about the middle of E deck, in what we call the working alleyway.
How many people slept in that same room with you?
19 of us, sir.
And what time did you retire that night?
At 9:30, sir. I was due again at 12 o'clock.
Due on watch or on duty at 12 o'clock midnight?
Yes, sir.
How were you awakened?
I was awakened by something, but I did not know what it was, and I called to my mate and I said, "What time is it that they're going to call us next?" It was then between 25 minutes and 20 minutes to 12. He said, "I don't know," so I turned over to go to sleep again. At that minute, I heard a loud shout, "Close watertight bulkheads." I recognized it as our boatswain's voice. It was extra loud, and I looked out, and he was running from fore to aft.
And what was he saying?
Just the one shout, "Close watertight bulkhead doors."
How long was that after the impact?
That would be under 10 minutes, sir. 7 minutes, I would say, as near as possible.
Was there any other signal that you know for that action except the word of mouth?
That is the only word, sir. My bed was next to the door.
Do you know whether that was done or not?
Well, a seaman was running with him from forward to aft, and so I took it that they were going along to close the doors. But my business did not take me so far as that door.
Okay, what did you do then?
I partly dressed and looked out of the door, and I saw the third-class passengers coming along from forward with their portmanteaus. I had gotten about 30 yards probably when I met a passenger with a piece of ice, that size, and he said, "Will you believe it now?" And I threw it down on the deck. With that, I went back and finished dressing, and then went up on the deck.
What did you do then?
As I was going through the door, I met a bedroom steward named Stone. He was the man my mate was supposed to relieve. He was bedroom steward on E deck. I said, "What is the time?" And he said, "Never mind about that. There's nothing else for you to do. I saw them pull up bags of mail and the water running out of the bottom of them." My mate called down to E deck, and I went down the other ladder to A deck where I was to relieve the man. When I got on A deck, the bedroom steward was assisting passengers then, and most of the doors were open. That was the forward end of A deck, and I said, "Have you called all of your people?" He said, "Yes, but I can't get them to dress." They were standing in the corridors, partly dressed. I said, "I will go down on my deck," and with that, I went down to B deck, arousing my passengers. That is when I met Mr. Harrison and Mr. Andrews, the builder.
And did you arouse your passengers in their staterooms?
Yes, I aroused the passengers in my stateroom, and I saw them all out except Mr. Carter's family, and Mr. Harrison told me they were already up.
Did you assist in putting life belts on them?
Yes, sir, but more on C deck. I threw the life belts down and then threw some of them into the corridor. Mr. Andrews said to be sure there were no life belts left. The first cabin I went to was at the foot of the pantry stairs. I pulled the bottom drawer out and stood on it and got out the life belts. And as a gentleman was passing there, I gave him one of those.
Do you know who he was?
No, I gave him one. He was a stout gentleman, appeared to be an Englishman. He said, "Show me how to put this on." And I showed him how. And then he said, "Tie it for me." And I said, "Pull the strings around to the front and tie it." And as he was doing it, I ran outside and opened the other doors, and then most of the doors were open along C deck.
What about Mr. Guggenheim and his secretary and others?
They were in their room. I took the life belts out. The life belts in this cabin were in the wardrobe in a small rack, and the cabin was only occupied by 2. There were 3 life belts there. I took all 3, put one on Mr. Guggenheim, and he apparently had only gone to his room, for he answered at the first knock. He said, "This will hurt." I said, "You have plenty of time. Put on some clothes, and I will be back in a few minutes."
And did you get back there?
Yes, sir.
And he was there?
Yes. He followed me along, and then I found number 78 cabin door shut, and I banged with both hands on the door, loudly, and a voice answered, "What is it?" Then a lady's voice said, "Tell me what the trouble is." I said, "It is necessary that you should open the door, and I will explain everything, but please put the life belts on, or bring them in the corridor." They said, "I want to know what is the matter." And I said, "Kindly open the door," and I still kept banging. I passed along, and I found one cabin was empty, and then I came to another cabin, and a lady and gentleman stood at the door. They were swinging a lifebelt in their hands.
When you know who they were, please name them.
I do not know anyone outside the people in my section.
Okay. Did this woman open the door when you pounded so hard?
I did not see the door opened.
Do you know who was in that room?
Well, I don't know the name. It was a shortish name. I fancy it began with an S. They were a stiff-built gentleman and a rather short, thin lady. They were undoubtedly Americans.
And have you learned who they were?
I have made no inquiry since then.
Have you ever seen them since?
No, sir, but I think I should recognize them if I saw them.
So you did not see them aboard the Carpathia?
No, sir.
Okay, what did you do after that?
I went along to the purser's place, and he said, it is necessary to go up on the boat deck. And he said, tell all the other bedroom stewards to assemble their passengers on the boat deck and stand by. I went on the boat deck, and they were just loading boat number 7. I said to the quartermaster, is this boat number 5? He said, no, it is the next boat.
You were on the starboard side?
On the starboard side, yes.
And you went then to number 9 lifeboat?
Number 7. I went to and asked him, is this number 5? He said, no, it's the next boat. I looked at number 5, and they were taking the covers off and preparing her, and I assisted to launch number 7 boat. There was Mr. Murdoch, Mr. Ismay, Mr. Pittman, and a quartermaster, 2 stewards, and myself there.
And were you all working?
My part was that I was clearing the falls. They were catching in the falls, or at least the falls were catching people's feet as they were jumping around, and I cleared the falls as they were lowering them away. I went down to do it.
Did Mr. Murdoch assist in loading the boat or lowering it?
Mr. Murdoch stood there the whole time giving orders.
And did Mr. Pittman assist?
Mr. Pittman assisted, yes, and Mr. Ismay was assisting with the falls.
What did Mr. Ismay do?
Mr. Ismay, in the first place, was asking the gentlemen to kindly keep back, as it was ladies first in the boat, and they wanted to get the boat clear first.
Go ahead.
After we lowered the boat...
Wait, just a moment. That boat was filled from the boat deck?
Yes, sir.
Was it difficult to get into it from the deck?
There was not the slightest difficulty, sir. A child could have stepped over.
Was it a full-size lifeboat?
Yes, sir.
And were the women put into it first?
Yes, sir. The gentlemen were lined up, those that were trying to assist, and Mr. Ismay said, kindly make a line here and allow the ladies to pass through. Excuse me, and I think it was Mr. Murdoch's voice that was calling out, ladies, this way, is there any more ladies before this boat goes? The boat was 3 parts full of ladies, to my knowledge.
Were there any more to get in? Did any more get in?
There were, because number 5 boat, which I went to next, took over 36 ladies.
And that was the next boat?
That was the next boat, yes, sir.
And so you went to number 5 boat, then from number 7?
Yes, sir.
But you did not get into number 7?
No, I did not attempt to get into number 7. My boat was number 5, sir.
Your boat was number 5, so that was your station?
That was my station, sir.
What men got into number 7, if you know?
I did not see the men that got in there, sir.
Did Mr. Pittman get in?
No, sir.
No officer got in?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
About how many men were in number 7?
I could not say, sir, because the position of the ladies sitting there was such that there may have been men in the back of the stern of the boat, and I was not able to see them.
About how many men?
I could only say for certain that there were 3 men there, the men forward, but who they were I could not say.
And the men manned the boat?
They were the men to attend the forward fall, I take it, sir.
And no other men got in?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Was it lowered in safety?
Yes, sir. It was lowered perfectly, and it seemed to me that the boat went down extra level and very clear in the block.
This was the first boat that you assisted in filling?
Yes, sir.
Were there any children in the boat?
In number 7 boat, I saw 1 child, sir, a baby boy, with a small woolen cap over his head. I remember it well.
And then you proceeded to boat number 5?
Yes, sir. The next boat on the same side.
And what did you do there?
I assisted as I had assisted at number 7. I stood by the forward fall with the quartermaster and 3 more stewards.
And who was that quartermaster?
Mr. Oliver, sir.
Did he survive?
Yes, sir.
And the other 2?
2 other stewards. I have not seen them since, sir.
Was the same course taken with that boat?
That was the same, sir. After getting all the women that were there, they called out 3 times. Mr. Ismay called out twice, I know, in a loud voice, are there any more women before this boat goes? And there was no answer. Mr. Murdoch called out, and at that moment a female came up who I did not recognize. Mr. Ismay said, come along, jump in. She said, I'm only a stewardess. He said, never mind, you are a woman, take your place. And that was the last woman I saw get into number 5 boat, sir.
And what men got into it?
There were 2 firemen in the bow of the boat. Mr. Pittman was standing in the center on the deck waiting, and one steward was standing with myself at the forward fall. Oliver, the sailor, the quartermaster who we had been assisting, stepped back with myself into the crowd of gentlemen. Mr. Murdoch said to me, "Are you the steward appointed to this boat?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Number 5 boat is mine." He said, "Then jump in and assist those men with the forward fall." So I took my place. At the same moment, Mr. Pittman called out, "Is there a sailor in the boat?" I looked around and I said, "No, sir." He said to this man Oliver, who was standing on the deck, "Are you a sailor?" And he said, "Yes, sir." So he said, "Take your place in this boat," and he jumped in. Mr. Murdoch then stepped up and said, "Are you the officer going in this boat?" He said, "Yes, sir." So then he said, "Take your place," and held out his hand and shook hands and said, "Goodbye and good luck." And he took his place, and the order was given to lower the boat.
Who was that officer to whom Mr. Murdoch spoke?
Mr. Pittman.
The third officer?
Yes, sir.
What other men got into that boat?
There was a stout gentleman, sir, stepped forward then. He had assisted to put his wife in the boat. He leaned forward, and she stood up in the boat, put her arms around his neck, and kissed him. And I heard her say, "I can't leave you." And with that, I turned my head. The next moment, I saw him sitting beside her in the bottom of the boat, and some voice said, "Throw that man out of the boat." But at that moment, they started lowering her away, and the man remained.
And who was he?
I do not know his name, sir, but he was a very stout gentleman, an American.
Was the boat lowered in safety?
Perfect, sir.
What was done after you reached the water?
Just as we got about 20 feet down, a voice called out and said, "Be sure and see the plug is in that boat." And I passed the word around. I said, "See, the plug is in the boat." Oliver crawled to the bottom of the boat, and I suppose he put the plug in, for when we touched the water, I crawled about in the bottom of the boat and found no water. So I took it the plug had been put in safely.
Did the boat go away from the side of the Titanic?
He cut the trigger that released the falls, and the order was given to pull off, to lay off from the ship. We laid off about 100 yards and waited, and the ship started going down. Seemed to be going down at the head, and Mr. Pittman gave us the order to head away from the ship, and we pulled off then, I should say, about a quarter of a mile, and laid on our oars.
How long?
We remained until the Titanic sank.
Did you see it go down?
I saw it go down, sir.
You could not see who was on the deck from your distance.
I saw, when the ship rose, her stern rose, a thick mass of people on the after end. I could not discern faces, of course.
Did the boat go down by the head?
She seemed to raise once as though she was going to take a violent dive, but sort of checked as though she had scooped the water up and had leveled herself. She then seemed to settle very, very quiet until the last, when she rose up, and she seemed to stand 20 seconds, stern in that position, and then she went down with an awful grating, like a small boat running off a shingly beach.
Oh, how long were you lying off, so to speak?
Before the Titanic sank, sir?
No, after.
Well, we waited a few minutes after she had gone down. There was no inrush of water or anything. Mr. Pittman then said to pull back to the scene of the wreck. The ladies started calling out, 2 ladies sitting in the front where I was pulling, and said, "Appeal to the officer not to go back. Why should we lose all of our lives in a useless attempt to save those from the ship?" I said I had no power. An officer was in charge of the boat, and he must use his discretion.
But as a matter of fact, you did not go back.
We did not go back.
How many people were in lifeboat number 5? Did you count them?
We left the ship, sir. When we had gone away from the ship, we had 42, including the child.
Did all survive?
All survived.
How many of the crew were in your boat, Mr. Etches?
6, sir, including the officer.
And who were they?
There was a steward and myself.
Give the names if you can.
I could not do that, sir.
All right, just give them if you can.
There were men there that I met that I did not know were on board the Titanic, that I had no idea were aboard the Titanic, although in my own department.
Were there any male passengers besides the 6 members of the crew?
There were 4 gentlemen, to my knowledge, sir.
And who were they?
I do not know any of their names, sir. 2 we transferred, with a lady and her child, into boat number 7, I believe, sir.
But you do not know any of their names?
No, sir.
6 members of the crew and 4 passengers.
Gentlemen, yes, sir. I did not know the other 2 gentlemen were there until we were transferring them.
Into number 7.
No, I did not know they were there. They were in the after end of the boat somewhere.
You do not know any of the other men except the one you have mentioned, the officer Pittman?
No, sir.
Do you know any of the women who were in that boat?
I know the stewardess, but I do not know her name. Although she has a relative here at the present time. He could give you her name and address.
You mean a witness?
Yes, sir.
And what is his name?
Crawford, sir.
Of your own knowledge, do you know whether any general call was made for passengers to arouse themselves from their berths? And when it was, or whether there was any other signal given?
The second steward, sir, was calling all around the ship. He was directing some men to the storerooms for provisions for the boats, and others he was telling to arouse all the passengers and to tell them to be sure to take their lifebelts with them.
Was there any lamp in lifeboat number 5?
I saw none.
Were there lights about the deck where the boats were being loaded?
Yes, sir. The cabin doors and all were open, giving a good light there.
So you had no difficulty in seeing the passengers or the people or the means of operating?
I never saw a hitch in the lowering or the loading of the boats. In fact, I have seen more commotion at an ordinary boat drill than there was on that occasion.
Did you see any other boat loaded and lowered?
No, sir.
Did you see any lights while you were lying by, after or before the Titanic sank from any other ship?
After the Titanic sunk, we pulled a good distance out farther from her. After the cries were all over, we pulled away, and a light we thought was a mast headlight of a ship was across where the port bow of the Titanic would have been at the time. During the time the Titanic was there, I saw no light. I was looking at the Titanic the whole of the time.
Could you see the bridge when the ship went down?
You could see it quite plain, sir.
Did you see anybody on the bridge?
Not a soul, sir.
You probably could not distinguish objects.
There may have been there. They may have been near the wheelhouse, but not on the corner of the bridge. I did not discern anyone there, sir.
So after you started out to sea, away from this wreck, did you see any lights of other vessels?
Yes, sir. We saw a light that there was quite an argument over. Some said it was a star, others said it was a ship, but we pulled toward it, and we did not seem to approach it at any inch nearer. It had every appearance of a masthead light of a ship, but a rather faint light.
Did you see any icebergs that morning?
Oh, yes, sir. We saw a very large ice floe of flat ice and 3 or 4 bergs in between in different places, and on the other bow were 2 large bergs in the distance.
How far away was this field ice?
The field ice would be from us 3/4 of a mile at the least.
And at what hour?
Between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning.
In what direction?
I should say it would have been well over on the port side of the Titanic, in the position she was going, I should say, by the way we pulled. It must have been on the port side of the Titanic.
Did you see number 7 after leaving the Titanic?
We saw number 7 when we got alongside of the Carpathia, and they handed back the child, and I passed it aboard the Carpathia.
How far were you from where the Titanic went down, as near as you can judge, when you saw this field of ice?
I should say we were about 1.5 to 2 miles.
How far was the Titanic when she went down from that ice field that you mentioned?
I could not say if the ice was traveling at all, but it could not have been a great distance on the other side of the Titanic, not from that position.
Were there any bergs there about that field of ice?
There was no berg. Well, there were 3 at different points, but the field extended such a long distance, and they were in the field, apparently. But the separate bergs that we saw were a long way from the field of ice, the floating ones. They were separated from the field of ice.
In what direction from the field of ice?
When the Carpathia picked us up, the Carpathia would be here, and the field of ice here, and the bergs across the opposite side from her.
So the bergs would have been on the starboard side of the Titanic.
Exactly, sir.
That is all, Mr. Etches. You may be excused.
Well, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say because I thought this was useless.
Oh my gosh, I thought there was so much going on. Holy moly.
I'm going to sum it up. 2 things. What were these questions? Why are you asking about whether this guy's working or not and if he has papers? And why are you asking so many questions about number 7 boat? It's not even his boat. And then also, I will say I did like, though, that we get a real slice of life, like, nobody else has talked about that the passengers refused to get dressed and put on their life belts and things like that, and the stout Americans being rude.
Yes.
But otherwise, what was okay, pop off, Mom.
Okay.
What's going on?
Well, it did seem like the senator was headed somewhere, but then he
where?
quit going wherever he was headed. So, yeah, but he started out, I felt like he had a definite direction. But then, And this, what's his name? Etches must be pretty impressive that they let him be in charge of Mr. Andrews.
Yeah, and Mr. Guggenheim.
Yeah. And I was very confused by his description, like that he was on A deck and there was only one other, but then no, he was beside this guy.
And then this was an empty room.
So I was confused by the locations.
And then when he lists his things, he's like, 96, 98, and 84, and then the door. But what is that?
Yes.
What do you mean?
Right. So it was very, very confusing. And I was very impressed that Mr. Andrews got a bathroom. Because down low, you're sharing one.
A bathroom.
So, bummer. But yeah, I was impressed with that. And I think that Etches, at least, was very impressed with Andrews because he was talking about how busy he was and the suit that he wore.
And how he implement, like, day and night, every day he's just working on new suggestions that people are bringing to him instead of being like, what do you know, you're a bedroom steward. Like, I was impressed too hearing that.
I was too. And that he listened to the steward and jotted it down. I'm like, okay, I'll look into that. So I'm really, really impressed because so far he's been painted as a kind of a skis and, just... I haven't heard anything good about him.
No, I agree. But I was very impressed.
I was very impressed that he is there for a reason and he's not just,
I built it, I'm riding
up on the deck, la la la.
la.
So, I was very impressed with that. And then I was like, first of all, were life belts a new thing back then? Because
it must be, because nobody knows how to put them on.
Everybody's like the stout Englishman that was like, stop what you're doing and put this on me.
And then tie it for me.
And now tie, It's like, what? Because...
Yeah, they must have been. That's a good point.
So I was just not sure.
New stuff. Yeah, they must have been because...
And well played, stout gentleman that got in the boat with his wife. Because he did it with no shame. The wife didn't want to leave me.
Right.
It was either let her die or go with her.
Yeah,
so I'm a gentleman, stout that I am. So that made me chuckle. But could you imagine waking up into this? Because he was in bed.
Yeah.
And they heard it and he's well, what's up with that? No, nothing.
Roll back to
sleep.
Lock the doors.
You hear this yell and you're kind of in your sleep and then you get up. And all this chaos is going on.
And also time to get to work, too.
And then in every corner you turn, something new is happening.
Put this on me!
You got people that don't know about the life belts, and you're going and finding the life belts, and people aren't letting you in the door till you tell them what it is.
How about that? But also, I could sort of get it if they didn't hear anything, and then they're like, what's going on? And then I just wonder... Who's the mysterious woman? Maybe the woman's not supposed to be in there.
Scandal!
Because why were they so,
Scandal.
Uncooperative? But also, maybe he could have been like, we have an emergency situation. You need to open the door. Instead of like, open the door and I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, how do I even know that you are my steward? You could be anyone trying to peek in. Maybe you're coming to rob my jewels. That's most likely it. And then, like, the whole thing, just each step of the way, and now you're in the water, and all these screams, and then the way he described the ship going down, that was the best description.
Yes, I think, I agree, too.
It gave me goosebumps. It was really, really good. And then, and then you hear the screams, and then they stop, and are we going back? Are we not going back? Yeah. And now the sun's coming up. Yay, the sun's coming up. What's with all this ice and the icebergs? And and we're going to hand these people off to boat 7, but then when we get over to the to the Carpathia, you're going to hand the kid back so we can get him up.
Yeah.
It just the speed at which everything was coming and new things in your face, in your face, in your face.
Really highlighted that because some of the accounts seem like they have some gaps of space or something. You can't really have a clear notion of time. But this is very and I like also the guy that had the block of ice and was like, "Will you believe me now?"
And I'm like, "I'm going to put on my coat." I will believe you now.
Guess I'll get dressed.
Yes, I will believe you.
What's that about a life belt?
And then the when he was clearing the falls because everybody was getting their feet caught in them. Whoa!
Yeah,
yipes! Again, another thing that nobody.
Yeah, and he just got to work right on it.
What? Something's got my foot.
This doesn't really have to do with anything, but I also did like when they were asking how old Mr. Andrews was, and he's like, "Well, he put 38 on a piece of paper he signed to me." What?
I'm not saying he is or he isn't. I'm just saying that's what he writes.
And then
down.
Again about the light. I know, every time, but how how disheartening must that have
Yeah.
been? I mean, that's like, I've never been in the situation to see a mirage, but it's like in the desert movies where...
Right,
you know,
and then you get there and
think
it's
you're
nothing.
saved and it's nothing.
Yeah, oh, good analogy. I like that. It's very... puts it into really good perspective for me.
Push yourself like, okay, we got it just a little more, we'll get there, and then no, you don't. But okay, what happens to our boy Henry Samuel? Uh-oh.
Well, he was in charge of the 8 first-class cabins in Andrews, and he continued to work at the sea for the remainder of his working career.
Okay.
But he was as a bathroom attendant from there on in.
Oh, demoted.
And then there's not a lot known about him. And I looked so many other places to see if I could find out what was what. Because, well, first of all, it was supposed that his ashes were scattered at sea, which is nice.
Makes sense.
But the thing that really baffled me was the only other thing I could find out was that he had over £1 million to his name when he died.
Oh!
Now, he's a bathroom attendant.
Yeah, and back in the day, too, £1 million.
And he stayed on the ocean. He didn't go start a chicken farm or anything. But he just, they're just, oh, by the way, he had £1 million to his name when he died. But where did he get it? I have and I looked, and I looked, and I looked, and I looked,
what
and
a
I could not find it.
Henry,
and
who
I'm
are
just
you?
like, very, very interesting fella. So I was really impressed with his interview, and
well, if anyone knows, do let us know. But
very baffled by his
Mom couldn't find
future.
it. It's probably not out there.
That's true. It's pretty unlikely that it's there if I couldn't find it. So that's all I have for today. So we'll see you next time.
All right, bye. As always, thank you for listening. Please be sure to let us know what you're thinking in the comments or at titanictranscripts@gmail.com. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook page, Titanic Transcripts, for more interesting tidbits and general discussion.